Time for Fullest House First Edition, where we are playing Vaettiheim. It is turn 41, and I don't think that Foul Vapor's trap is going to go off, which means it will, right, universe? That's never how that works. So yeah, we get a couple levels of blood magic research finished, as well as thaumaturgy. There was a battle in some province I'm not familiar with. This is a magic phase attack. Special monsters, it says, but I think this is Call Horror, probably from Marignon, I think. And you don't actually get the province, so like if these horrors win, ooh, okay, and this is an army too. Okay, so let's take a second here. So this is probably just a softening up attack and will be followed by a normal phase attack, I would guess. Or, maybe this is just the first turn, because I believe the fort that this army is sitting on, I'm assuming that this is the army sitting on top of Marignon's fort that we've seen before. That fort is not cracked, so Marignon has a few turns, right, to harass it like this. And unlike some of the forces that the merfolk were using against Xibalba, right, which didn't really have any mage support, this is a ton of mage support. I don't even know who this guy is. Yeah, so this looks like a hero. He's been given a pretty hefty weapon. This is 15 gems, a ton of fire damage, so maybe a little bit worried about some thugs coming in. And then he's got a communion going up. Of course, like Legions of Steel, you can probably expect Strength of Giants, some wooden warriors, like a little bit of like cheat fate, so some ethereal. Looks like he's managed to get sages from somewhere, possibly a throne or an independent province, which is not good news. It means that their research is, our research isn't fantastic, but their research is going to be significantly better than it normally is, because sages are excellent researchers. And they have some of their cap-only mages here, I believe, who are a little bit insane. There's certain bloodline issues with this faction, but they are usually very powerful mages, although I think their path access is like a little all over the place. Yeah, so they have a ton of randoms that they can get. But I believe most, if not all of them, have Astral, right? And we can see a communion going up, so there's probably some pretty hefty communions. There's even a lumber construct back here who has not been given any kit, but he's been brought out to fight nonetheless. And this is a really serious army. I don't think it's going to have any problem with just a few horrors, although it might trigger gem usage. Actually, I don't think so, right? Because none of these spells so far that I'm seeing would require gems. So horrors are pretty dangerous, but not against this level of like mages and troops. So that doesn't really work out, I would say, for Marignon. Assuming, of course, they are the ones, who cast that. We'll double check, what province this is, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. We find nothing with our site searching, but that's okay. We were just kind of hanging out there to defend the province anyway. And our blood hunting went okay. Definitely one of these provinces, we don't have enough patrollers. So we'll probably need to summon in more birds. And then we get raided by Pangea somewhere. So this is probably where his army went. No, this is just the raiding force. This guy's going to cast some lightning. Nice. Has to use air gems for that, though, so that's a little sad. I don't know if that's really necessary. We actually, invested kind of heavily in this province defense and then didn't cover it. That was probably just an oversight, because this is absolutely a place, right, that, we could tell that it's like, there's a good chance Pangea would go here. Just failed on that. So we're not going to do great here. Honestly, the Pangean troops are pretty excellent, it seems like, for late age Pangea. And really, they've been crushing province defense. They've been crushing armies. And then we have a raid here against Patala in their cap circle. And this we've agreed to just give up to Gath, which I'm fine with, except for the fact that, of course, we bump into some stuff. This player is really good, just making sure they send out defenses. Their capital is probably not under threat, right? Gath, I think, failed relatively recently and is probably still, in the mode of like regathering their army. So since there's no significant threat against the capital, then why not spread out your forces? And that is part of why we attacked that other cave, right? Because we were thinking okay, well, it's unlikely that Patala is gonna expect us to attack there, which was true. And then, of course, unfortunately, we bumped into Gath. Now it's pretty difficult, honestly, to raid somebody that's this small, and I probably just shouldn't have bothered, right? Because it's like Patala only has, other than their cap, 3 provinces or something, and it's just not that difficult, to cover 3 provinces that are all connected to your 1 fort against raiders. So raiding becomes a lot harder and a lot less useful the smaller someone is, and I think this demonstrates that pretty well. And they don't even need really their sacreds and stuff here. I think just this level of province defense investment routed our poor Veti. So raiding is going to be much more useful against somebody like Raga. That's a lot larger. Although Raga has so much money that I'm a little concerned that their PD investment is going to be relatively high. So yeah, we get taken out there, and you can see that the forces that they moved out didn't even really get a chance to fight. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw this group deeper into our territory. And I've talked about how we're probably going to have to mobilize against Patala. That's another reason that I don't necessarily want to sign a non-aggression pact with Gath, because I'm starting to doubt that they'll ever be able to break Patala. We don't have time for this. I want this problem to go away, and so far Gath has not been able to deliver on that. Then we catch a battle between Cetis and Atlantis, who's also suffering the pains of, that our host subbing in as a sort of dead, mostly dead nation. And sort of dead, I think, would be the operative situation. So this must have been a ping, because I think this battle is about to finish. And so Atlantis still has a decent army here. I mean, it's mostly just undead, and then I think skelly spam from the sound of it. But yeah, I mean, there's a ton of mages here. So and then there's gems, right? Water gems. That's not skelly spam. Probably a fatigue play, I'm guessing, since they have, so much undead in this army. This is looking pretty dangerous, and this is actually probably good news for us, right? Because I was wondering a bit, we have a non-aggression pact with Cetis, so not too worried about that, but you do always want to know, what your neighbors are currently involved with, and it looks like Cetis still has some work cut out for them. And then, of course, this is the big one, potentially. So, our main army, our Falvaver's Trap, and, there's nothing here, so... Like I said, this is kind of unfortunate because they get to scout our army. Probably should have. We have a ton of raiders. We have tried to raid into Abyssia before. But there's really just no excuse for this. This is coming off the heels. Thankfully, one of the games that I was in has ended because definitely committed to too many games, which is a classic Dominions player problem. Which I have encountered for the first time, and I'm walking it back, hopefully, so that my play will improve a little bit. Because we could have organized a stronger raiding party, because we just tried with one diseased twice-born Veti, and she didn't manage to take it. But now we've given away our army composition for free, and it was an army composition where I was planning on a trap. So there's a pretty good chance, I think, that Pangean army moved inside, and this is maybe a situation where I should have doubled, tripled down, done another Woven Winter. I don't know. It was pretty painful. Once I realized that it's there's actually a site in Abyssia that's increasing the heat, it really kind of felt ridiculous to be spending all those water gems. Maybe should have just waited for winter. But anyway, we're here now, so we'll see what happens. The only good news is that, Pangea has not had a ton of time to recruit, and they haven't had a ton of money, and so they have taken some attrition. So I think the balance is a bit more in our favor this time. The other thing, too, is that I think we have Rigor Mortis available to us now, and I should have brought some Death Gems along with this army, but of course we didn't have Rigor Mortis when I set out, and so, also, Death Gems are really precious, so just loading a bunch of Death Gems up for an army that can't immediately use them did not cross my mind. But of course, now we're in position and we haven't actually had a battle yet. I was also expecting to, have our battle sooner, but of course, sometimes that's not how it works out. So should have brought some Death Gems in anticipation of the fact that, hey, if we don't have a major battle in the next 1 to 2 turns, you'll then have Rigor Mortis available, and you can add it to this army, which we will still do, but we just can't do it this coming turn unless I'm forgetting some Death Gems that I put on a scout, which, like I said, probably not. But we will definitely send some Death Gems out to this army, so whereas this turn we wanted this engagement, now it would be nice if Pangaea would sit inside their citadel for a turn or two. And then speaking of capital battles, this is probably a storm. Okay, yeah, Yeoman is just poking in. Definitely the Path of Wisdom, I think. Those archers have pretty long range. This actually might be a trap of sorts. I take that back. I'm not sure what kind of trap you could be casting with that. In fact, what is this guy trying to cast? Well, now I'm definitely confused, so I'm not sure what the plan is here, but I am intrigued. Let's see what we have inside. Not too much. A decent number of casters. Looks kind of just like Skelly spam. Looks like maybe a hero as well, who sadly is diseased. I don't know, whoever this guy is. This looks like potentially another hero. I don't actually see a god here, I don't think. Yeah, so, we obviously know very little about Tianqi, but still, like Skelly spam inside of a fort, that can be a real hassle to deal with. This isn't like a ton of Skelly spam, but it's enough, to give pause. So we don't know like what kind of actual army Yeoman has. Okay, it's the lesser earth elemental. So maybe Yeoman thought that this fort was almost completely empty, but there is no way that this works out for them. Yeah, at least this guy is set to retreat, or maybe probably his morale just failed. Yeah, his morale failed. He was like, absolutely not. Yeah, his battle fright. He was terrified by this experience, which I think is understandable. So again, it's going to be a little while before this nation can put pressure on Raga. So we have some unexpected events. We find some magic. That's nice. Or rather, magic is increased in this province. Hey, we get rid of a band of robbers. That's a new one. We get some of their gold. Very nice. And yeah, this seems more like it. And heat +3, we actually really don't like that, although not really anticipating any battles here this turn, so not such a big deal. And as far as population loss goes, 600, not that bad. And then we do lose 2 scouts, or actually this could be, yep. So maybe we are going to be fighting Raga. This, of course, is the danger of moving a lot of raiders in. And it looks like we just get patrolled out there. Yeah, I don't think this is all province defense, although it might be. Like I said, I do think Raga has been investing a lot in province defense because they have a massive amount of territory, so they probably have quite a lot of gold, I'm imagining. And although yeah, there is a group of Zieten, and there's no way they get that in their province defense, surely. But Zieten are definitely going to beat our Wolf brothers, and yeah, I probably just won't acknowledge that diplomatically. And we'll just see what Raga does about it. But there's an argument to be made that we should probably just launch our other raider groups because they're going to continue to get patrolled out. And at this point, like, Raga's already, they got to have a good idea. Like, if they don't realize that we're hostile at this point, then they definitely have their head in the sand. And I don't really get that sense. So it would be better for us to like pick our raiding fights rather than get patrolled out. On the other hand, if Raga is busy enough, like they know now that we're hostile, but also it's like if we're not really willing to, if we're not harassing them and they're busy, then it might be a little time coming before retribution comes back at us. This is a scout, I believe, and this is probably that Atlantean army. And yeah, I'd kind of held off from jumping on top of Atlantis's forts because there was no Cetician army on top of it, which often means that there's a big stack patrolling on top of that fort, which means if you move your scout there, there's a good chance you get patrolled out. But it had been a while, and I was kind of curious, so we sacrificed a scout for this information. And then, yeah, we started to destroy the fort in Abyssia. The walls are lightly damaged, so almost assuredly now that army moved inside. But that's okay, right? I think there's a good chance that Pangaea is just going to want to sit inside. I don't know. I've fought this player before, and they definitely don't mind sitting inside of a fort. And it usually is a good idea, right? It's like if you're on the defensive and somebody's pushing against you, but they take a long time to break down the fort, that gives you a long time to like summon in new units. You can't recruit new units, but you can summon in new units. And they have some powerful casters in there. But I think in this case, that's going to work in our favor, because we're going to be able to get rigor mortis available, and we'll definitely bring up more troops, but especially we're going to need more siege strength because there are other things going on, and we don't want to give them too many turns, right? We just need like 1 or 2 turns to get our stuff together. And then there's some patrolling. So yeah, I'll see you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. I guess the first things first, let's talk about the Pangean War. So we are sitting on top of this fort. However, we're still going to hide with a lot of our stuff, all of our mundane troops. So the siege is going to go really, really slowly, but we are bringing up additional siege strength to help speed things along. And next turn, we'll probably switch from the Foul Vapors Trap to a fatigue play. So that way we can have our mundane troops, sitting on top of the fort and actually providing siege strength to break this down. It's a bit risky because we don't have a ton of numbers, right? And, Pangea does have a decent amount of stuff, but we did bring a lot of death mages, so we can produce a lot more skeletons than we could the last time we were here. We also have 2 lifelong protections, so that's going to be imps, and we can spam out some bugs. So yeah, I think overall the fatigue play will do pretty well, but this turn, we don't have, honestly, even the casters in position. We're having to bring forward some of our, blood randoms who will join together in a Sabbath with one of our casters, because we don't quite actually have a high enough death caster to cast Rigor Mortis. And then, of course, the death gems are also on the way. So this turn, mundane troops are hiding. We're still relying on Foul Vapors. And then next turn, we'll actually start to break down the walls. We are probably going to start to eat assassination attempts, but I think overall we're going to do okay. Definitely, it would be sad to lose the white mages. And actually, probably I should have redistributed some of the nature gems to them instead of just some of our regular commanders. But this turn has already rolled, so that is not an option. But with Frozen Heart, right, and we can make our own bugs, I think we'll probably at least trade out oftentimes with the Dryads, and we just have a lot more casters than Pangea is going to have Dryads, and they're not really going to be able to recruit anymore. So while, yes, that will be annoying, and, yes, we probably will take losses, I don't think it's going to be that bad, and certainly not worth, abandoning the siege or anything like that. The other nice thing is that now that Pangea has basically ceded us the field by hiding inside of their fort, we can step up our rating, right, and not have to worry about bumping into something really large. Now, up here, we'll see about this one. I'm expecting this to move out, but, if he doesn't, then we're probably going to lose a bunch of Wolf Brothers. But, just got to gamble sometimes. Otherwise, I think most of these raids are pretty safe. This is our heavier force who also now has, Moonblade in it, because the possibility of Lars is still out there. And we can see that, Pythium has invested pretty heavily in Hydras, so we're definitely going to need that poison resistance. Luckily we have it on the Bless, so that's helpful. And skeletons don't care about poison, but still. So a good chance that we're just going to get drawn into a war with Pythium in general, because I'm really not willing to give up this this forest rather. And yeah, a lot of these provinces, not this one, but this wasteland, that's actually quite a few gems. So while, I do want to fight Raga, right, we're already way past, I've definitely bailed on the Coalition. I think the Coalition, never really lived, although, everybody is still interested. And related to that, Utgard reached out to us and asked about this province, saying hey, are you planning on raiding it? And I said, no, as far as I'm concerned, it's all yours, because I think having good relations with Utgard would be advantageous. I think in some ways they would have been a good target for us, but they also make for useful allies. And I need to look into it, but it's possible that they also benefit from Illwinter. I believe that's a spell they can also cast. So I'm not sure how it works. If they cast it, can I take advantage of it? Or if I cast it, can they take advantage of it? So, in that sense, if we can work together on that, then we make ideal allies. And of course, we have other problems down here, right? If we're going to deploy our forces against anyone, over here, it's going to be against Patala or maybe against Gath. And if we want to fight against Raga, well, we have plenty of opportunity to do that here in the north. Otherwise, a couple smaller raids. Let's see. Yeah, we're finally getting, some of these groups into play. So I am very curious to see, how well they work out. Yeah, here's another one. Now, we're probably going to be up against, this is probably at least 6 province defense. And yeah, this is a little lighter. So maybe not quite such a good test, but still. It'll be interesting to see if that works out. Otherwise, the other big thing I'd say is we're gonna set up another army. I think here, we need to, I think, probably build a fort in this province and just have some forces down here. Because right now we're in a pretty weak negotiating position in terms of talking with Gath. They still have the offer out. I haven't gotten back to them about the non-aggression pact. I'm really kind of on the fence about it. Although I'm sure at this point, they're probably starting to wonder, and so may trigger a war, though they are at least somewhat busy with Patala. But anyway, we're going to recruit a bunch of crossbowmen to start with, which is like maybe questionable, but this is probably more or less all the crossbowmen that we'll have. Like I said, I do think having a squad of archers of some kind is useful. And as crossbows go, these are pretty good crossbows simply because they're pretty cheap. And then otherwise, like we're just getting more berserkers. But yeah, we do need to invest. We are doing some blood research, right? So hopefully we're going to get some other chaff generation options, as well as just some other troop options. Related to that, I think I'm going to avoid using crossbreeding this game. We'll see. We might do some crossbreeding as well, but instead we can also make bone fiends, who are not great. They have no protection, but they are at least decently killy. And then once you throw like some, battlefield-wide protection buffs on them, then they do a lot better. I also think they're going to be better patrollers, and I don't know, the stuff from crossbreeding, a lot of it requires upkeep, which is just kind of really frustrating. It's like they're just not worth it, in terms of like really, like we have to pay gold to these guys. So the bone fiends do not require any gold upkeep, but you do get, significantly fewer of them numbers-wise. So we'll see how that goes, right? We're getting some here. We're probably going to, the first round of Bone Fiends are probably going to initially be used as patrollers. We may strip them as the game goes on and replace them with some other set of patrollers. We're also making some over here. Still no plan for the vampire. We started a palisade here finally. I'm getting a little nervous. We've left our god on this border a little too long. We should probably get a shade mail on him to hide him. Because, we don't want to, we're relatively friendly with these neighbors, but no need to tempt them. And this does, I don't love having forts on the border, right? And then here we are with like a ton of forts on the border, and it's like in some ways kind of a hostile move, making it this fortified, but it's kind of, there's reasons for, this fort we found, this is the steel ovens, so we're going to stack up a bunch of valuable mages here, and then there's enchantresses here, so it's kind of like, sometimes you just have to go, where the mages and the sites are. Otherwise, most of the rest of this movement is, just site searchers and all that kind of stuff. In terms of our wider scouting network, I don't think we've seen a ton interesting, right? There is this force here, so I think that's why Atlantis was patrolling. So, unfortunately, we only have one scout in the area. He's going to try to get the heck out of Dodge so he doesn't get patrolled out of this province. But, we can't, since he's our only scout, we'll probably miss this battle, but we'll at least be able to move in, assuming that Satis wins and assuming that they attack. So we'll at least get to see the storm, which will give us some kind of idea about what level of research they're at. Otherwise, things still seem kind of back and forth between Marignan and Flegra. This little penetration kind of has the feel of that there was that one tyrant, I think, that we saw. So he's probably just making a march towards the throne, or possibly it's an army. Definitely Flegra will need an army because this is a decent amount of siege defense. So, a single super combatant or thug is not going to be able to break down the walls. But we've just got our scout kind of trailing, hoping to catch something interesting. And then, of course, we are keeping eyes on this. There must be a decent amount of siege defense in here. Not that there's a massive amount of siege strength in this army, but it's a decently large army, and this is still not cracked, and I believe it's been here a couple turns now. So that is notable. And then, otherwise, we continue to kind of scout Gath's territory and try to get better eyes on Raga to see who all is attacking. I think currently it is only the Merfolk Nation, so they were the only ones true to their word, at least so far that I have been able to see, although a lot of people were, somewhat lukewarm, as nobody likes the idea of having to deal with a giant stack of Zeddans. So yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 41.